was actually trying to speak of the identified challenges that the modern people, in spite of the fact that we are hosting the majority of the renewable energy projects from the different government up until government three, and then also the allocation after government 3.54 that is finalized. Fortunate position as an energy that we are hosting the majority of this project. Unfortunately, still this occurrence is not actually for the northern populace in general. It's not as if they are really benefiting from what is occurring in the north. We have made it clear that we think sustainability will be coming if we can succeed in putting up the manufacturing part or the downstream beneficiation from the renewable energy. That will be to the benefit of the province, but also, and this one is particularly important for us, the issue of skills development, the issue of making sure that Northern Cape people will not only be particularly in the low-skilled and semi-skilled areas within the renewable energy sector, but that we can also be in a position to develop high-level skills. And that is why we spoke about the human resource development strategy that we want to finalize with a specific focus on issues of skills development. But also, like we've been saying, we still have to see one or other person that is a successful industrialist or someone that is owners of the means of production within the renewable sector space. And that is why when we speak about how the Northern Cape can be positioned to maximally benefit from the renewable energy independent power provision procurement program, we are excited indeed that we have seen that this allocation that came to the province actually, particularly in the construction phase, have contributed to job creation, but also in some or other way contributed to, in some way, a little bit of skills development, but also we want our people, let me say our people, because we are from the Northern Cape. If I say our people, no one can ask me who is your people. We are speaking about the people of the Northern Cape, in particular the previously disadvantaged people, historically left behind. We are speaking about them also so that they should be benefiting. We must remember that when the government started with this program, but I think people thought that it is something that is a pie in the sky or possibly just a dream. But we have seen from where the renewable energy program started to where we are now. And I don't want to say everything, but I must speak about our province. And I think we will hear some other developments from Mam Khadi, because I was excited to hear this morning from her that the IRP has been approved by Cabinet, and that is one of the areas or one of the areas that will assist us. Remember, we want to have a SEZ in Appington. We want to develop a solar park where we want to branch into manufacturing. We want to make sure that Alistair become a black industrialist because he's sitting right in front of me. But exactly, we wanted to branch in the renewable energy space because there We have got people experience in the art. We've got people that have got experience of the development of these solar parks. But the unfortunate part is that where do we take them to make sure that they benefit from the experience that they have acquired during the process of what have already been developed. So for the Northern Cape, it is important. Our municipalities are struggling. They cannot pay ESCOM. And we are saying we are the hub of renewable energy, but how does it benefit the people of the Northern Cape? And that is what we want to discuss and to resolve on where to from here. Thank you very much. Must I put this off? What is it? Sorry, let me check. There is a switch here. It's on. It's on. Speak. Speak. Number 3, please.
Can you hear me? Right, so I'll go ahead and I'm from the Department of Trade and Industry, and I mentioned in my short speech this morning that we basically deal a lot with promoting the local industrialization based, amongst others, on this renewable program. So I think what might be useful is to share some of the insights we get from the guys that actually invested in this industry. And when the very first thing we pick up when we first meet with new investors is they want to know how can we give them certainty that the IRP will be followed through. How do we give them certainty that the market that's here today will be here tomorrow, will be here in 5 years' time? Because I've got to invest, for example, a wind tower manufacturer, typically the initial investment is 350 to 400 million. They want to make sure they get their money at least back. And it's quite difficult in this space with the bid windows that run for they basically open 1 or 2 bid windows, and that's, investors often find that not sufficient to deal with the risk they have to take. And the experience we've had now in this last 2-3 years, unfortunately, just shows that the risk in this space is actually quite high. So if you want to really see investment in an area, you have to find a way to address it. The second thing that I've picked up is when we've got the independent power producers, many of them have got different technologies. We've got 3, 4, 5 different wind turbine technologies. You've got different solar PV technologies. You've got different inverter technologies. And a local manufacturer would invest, and they would contact the DTI and say, nobody's buying from you. And when we go to the developers and we ask them why from him, electronics or the software is not the same as ours, we can't buy from him, his product's not exactly the same. So if you really want to grow a sustainable industry, we've got to find a way to consolidate some of these components and make it viable for local investors in those components. The other important thing that I think we have to remember that we have to take into consideration is the start-stop nature, and I referred to it this morning. The way this competitive bidding works is they want to force the price of the electricity down as low as possible. So the bidders have to compete with each other on price and on economic development criteria. And the bid window would close, and then the financial close would be more or less at the same stage. So what typically happens is during the pre-bidding phase, the developers would get quotations from local industry on how much they would charge for wind towers, this, that, but they would never place firm orders because it's uncertain whether they would actually get the business. Then, when the bids are finally approved, these developers now want to buy these products at the prices they got a year ago, and they want the products to be delivered within 6 months. So you often find a typical wind factory can produce 100 towers a year. It would stand idle for a year, and then all of a sudden they've got to produce 100 to 200 towers in 6 months. So the stop-start nature of the business also makes it very difficult to really get sustainable business. And then the last thing I think I should touch on is the renewable energy is actually quite simple. A solar panel and an inverter is simple if you compare it to coal-fired power or nuclear power. So the value chain is not that massive. So at the end of the day, you've got to be realistic about what can be done and not be over-optimistic, I would say. So some of the solutions in this space is to try and find some consolidation of the technology. We see two different market segments in South Africa. The one market segment is the official independent power producer segment, the private market. A lot of investment by industries, etc., especially in the solar PV technology. And there's very little consolidation. We often find that manufacturers would supply the IPP market and importers would supply the rooftop market. So there's got to be some work to try and consolidate these markets. And the other thing that is also important is one or two of the successful independent power producers have actually got massive contracts in Africa and contracts, for example, with mining houses in South Africa. And we've proposed in the past that we find a way to allow localization credits on these products, maybe to also support their bidding in the independent power program, in a way try and consolidate these markets. It's not easy, but if you can, for example, get credits for price, we've got the economies of scale and the sustainable businesses that can get orders on that. And then the one big driver that we see overseas that really accelerates this market is the introduction of what they call smart grids. And basically a complete redesign of the electricity generation, transmission and distribution model. And Europe is a good example. The moment you introduce smart grids and the technology, this market really starts to boom. And then there's a huge number of opportunities in not only in the generation and the manufacturing, but also in the distribution side of electricity. So I'll end there.
Am I on? Thank you. I now want to hand over to Ms. Modise and then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, thank you. The points that I would like to make, I will take advantage of what the MEC Transparent said in the morning. He mentioned the province looking at establishing a renewable energy unit within the Department of Economic Development. And I think that would be a bold step. The reason why I'm raising that is because when it comes to planning of infrastructure projects, we always need to know that integrated and forward planning is very key. because you need to plan ahead for certain things to happen at a particular point in time. And without having the skills or dedicated units that are doing that, at times you would be complaining about national office not focusing on certain areas that are of priority to the province. And particularly, I mean, with infrastructure projects, the reason why you need to focus on integrated planning is not only about the generation point, particularly on renewables. You need to also take into account what generation points to be successful, because there are other key basic services that would be of help or as catalysts to what you need to do. Number one, some of the technologies would require water. You need the permitting process. So you need people who would understand the regulatory frameworks. And understanding the regulatory frameworks comes into the picture when it comes to intergovernmental relations framework. So use that as one of the pillars of understanding what does the law say in terms of what we need to do. And the other point, the province needs to invest into research and development in terms of available in the province, and we can take advantage of it, because in most partnership, especially on skills development, the Premier has touched on that. But how do you do that? You need to form partnerships with institutions that are there. As much as renewable energy sector is emerging, but I think it's been a while. We're talking about way back 2008, 2009. And the question that the province needs to ask itself is, what have we done in the area of research and development, particularly with the institutions in the country that are already doing a lot within the renewable energy sector? We have institutions, research institutions like CSIR. We have got University of Cape Town that focuses more on the energy sector. We have got Stellenbosch that deals with renewable energy as well. We have got University of Johannesburg. Most of the institutions are already offering skills within the very same sector that Northern Cape is one of the best provinces in the country when it comes to radiation. I also touched on the wind potential, particularly on South African parts of the province. So when those reports are released, you need to investigate more in terms of taking advantage of that. Northern Cape is one of the provinces that is also endowed with land availability. So how do you use land to your advantage? There are other areas that would be triggered by the generation point, like construction projects, particularly when it comes to other infrastructure projects such as water-related, because population growth triggers some of the basic needs. You would have wastewater treatment plants, potable water treatment plants, upgrading of your water resources. You would also need other projects such as road construction. Those are economic development inputs. So you need to take advantage of that, because it's not about generation. And one of the points that I thought also I should highlight is that surely you're talking about the province being a renewable energy hub. Within the skills that can be tapped into in the country, what else is not there? That you can partner with institutions that are outside even the continent. So how much are you investing through your Department of Education and sending the people with the province to go and study and come back? Because in most cases, the bursaries have conditions. They can go 3-4 years down the line, they are back in the province and giving back in terms of those skills that at the moment we are grappling with. Let me give an example with this. Like, for example, we need the wind turbine technicians. In most cases, we were still, relying on countries like Denmark. Why are we not building our own? 8 years, it's a long time. Let's make sure that we have our plans into place. Let me also touch on the issue of technology development and advancement. There are, depending on the resource potential, we need to identify the technologies that would suit the Northern Cape from the grid perspective, and also maybe stretching it towards the integrated planning. It should not only be the responsibility of Eskom as the national utility to deal with issues of grid connection. Some of the studies could be funded by the province itself. You have got the municipal infrastructure grant. Are you using that in such a way or in an approach that would benefit either ways? Because in some different spheres of government, the province, national as well as the national utility, are you ensuring that when it comes to grid planning, you are part of it, you're giving your inputs? And let me give you one example. I was, lucky to be part of the solar park, studies when it started. And some of the sites that were identified, it came to our attention that in terms of the transmission and distribution planning, infrastructure is not there. And while land is available, but some of the key infrastructure that should make that generation, point successful or seamless in terms of rollout, now it would be delayed because it's not linked to some of the key infrastructure that you require in terms of ensuring that ultimately you are in a position to generate. You are 10 years in the planning side of Eskom. Did you identify these issues well in advance? Because some of the projects or infrastructure that you require, it will be planning around 5 to 6 years before you even get to the generation. Taking advantage of the non-grid technology that we can benefit, optimally, and also cogeneration. These are some of the areas that you can look at in terms of ensuring that you position yourself, optimally as it would be expected. And one last point that I would like to touch on is opportunities that are linked with the generation point, like the local manufacturing. And like from the regulatory point of view, once you understand the interlinkages as well as the level of dependency, you are able to plan properly, because you wouldn't be talking about black industrialists without understanding what makes it possible. What would be the hindrances in terms of what would be the barriers. So research allows you to understand all those things in terms of making sure that you benefit on some of the opportunities that are downstream before you even talk about the generation side. So when it comes to local manufacturing, the corridor that we are referring to in terms of the solar corridor or the wind potential that is there, or the economic development zone, where does it put the Northern Cape as a province? So these are some of the key points that I would like to highlight, that there is a lot that the province needs to do on its own and partner with the other institutions, even including international partnership, where some of the skills are highly specialized in taking, like you look at the countries that have excelled, that have more or less potential like Northern Cape. How have they done it? We always know, or it's obvious, that we are not of cut and paste kind of approach, but we need to look at the best practices. How do we contextually fit for the Northern Cape? And we talk about transformation in the sector. There is what has been alluded this morning with respect to community upliftment. Are we playing a role when it comes to social corporate responsibility in making sure that the IPPs that are around are giving an input in terms of what the communities would benefit from? Let it not be like, for example, when it's Mandela Day, then we have projects such as painting a school. Can we make sure that those trust accounts that have been established are benefiting the actual needs when it comes to community requirements we need also to make sure that of importance to communities instead of just waiting for documents to be shared. So can we play a role that would cater for our actual needs instead of complaining at a later stage? So these are some of the things that I say you can position yourself optimally through the renewable energy, not necessarily focusing on the generation point, even from the tourism perspective. What does independent power producers bring to the province from the tourism point of view? What is it, the value chain, its value chain? How do we make sure that even those who are not engineers within the generation or transmission or distribution, whatever you look at it, whether it's civil, electrical, and other skills that would be required from the tourism part of it, what does that mean to the province, and how do we make sure that we benefit? And like most of the departments that are there, they play a key role in one way or the other. How do we make sure that this states that we want in terms of finally being a happy province and ensuring that we benefit at life? Those are the points that I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Colleagues, the three speakers have challenged us in very interesting ways. The Premier's been emphatic, and I've heard her on this subject often, and I know this is close to our heart. If we're spending all this money, what does it mean for people? How does it change the life of every person, the most marginal in the province? How do they feel the benefits? The Premier asked questions around the sociology of energy. We all know that poor people pay more for a unit of energy than rich people do, because they burn wood, coal, paraffin. Electricity is a lot more efficient. So a unit of energy in a poor home costs a lot more. What do rich people do is we waste it. We put on the lights when we don't need it. We run air conditioners when we don't need them, etc., etc. That relationship between energy needs to be tested. All three speakers spoke about the needs for skills development, and this is forward-looking skills development. Not what do we need now, what are we likely to need in another 5 or 10 years' time? And what are we doing right now to put it in place so that it is available when it is needed? I was a bit frightened by the idea that there's, I think it was 6,000 water heaters to be installed in Kimberley. I'm not aware of any industrialists or developers who are ready for that installation project. And it's going to be very likely that somebody from Joburg or Cape Town or Bloemfontein will be installing these things. We haven't thought of what we need to do to put in place skills that are needed to take advantage. Gerard makes some really interesting comments about the business opportunities in this space. The issue of risk is important, but this is naturally the nature of business. Technology for renewable energy is actually not that complex. In fact, the development of the technology is probably PhDs in electrical engineering or physics or whatever. Those of you who watch this space will know that we actually can make superconductors work. They work, they're very efficient. The only problem is they don't work at room temperature. They work at these ultra low temperatures. But if some scientist or physicist comes up with a superconductor that works at room temperature, large number of our energy problems are going to go away. I'm not sure that we're going to get there, but that's a technological development. Current technology is not that complex. If you're going to be seeing a business opportunity here, there may well be a gap in the market, but you also have to ask yourself, is there a market in the gap? And those are the sort of issues that the Northern Cape has to think about. Ms. Modise raises some really interesting questions about our relationships with energy. Are we going to be able to sustain current consumption patterns? Is this the right thing to do? Should Africa be trying to emulate the United States in energy consumption patterns? But if all we do is we give people access to electricity, perhaps lower cost, we may just be opening up a market for white goods, fridges, stoves, etc., washing machines. People start consuming in ways that earlier they didn't need, but simply to put money in the pockets of somebody else. And so those downstream beneficiation opportunities, we need to look at them, take advantage of them, but importantly, how do we make the power in production, relationships with the way sure that people get access to a dignified life. With those few comments, I must say I was stimulated by the three presentations. I'd like to open to the floor, and I suggest we take 3 or 4 questions, and then ask the panelists to respond. Sorry? 15. Oh, okay. I'm going to ask the 3 panelists to record the questions, think about which ones they'd like to respond to, and then we'll take a round and see how it goes. Okay. So can we take the first? I've noted first here in front, second halfway up, third over there. Okay. And then fourth over there and fifth over there. Let's take those 5 questions.
That's why the program director is here, ne? Each and everyone will pose your question, and they will be responded to in 15 minutes. That's how we do it. Thank you.
And please, can I really appeal to you not to give us, you're asking a question for clarification. Thank you.
Premier Sino, wat gebeur as ons nou academics praat? Pro 15 minute gaan praat. Nou wil jy met 1 minuut praat.
Prof antwoord.
Yeah. Premier, let me just raise important issues. So, I've been in this field since 2009. And I was active sub-8 strategic infrastructure project 8 of green economy in South Africa, the one that was led by IDC. So I've been in this space for almost 9 years now. So let's leave the English. I was very disappointed with the first part in the speeches, but I now see where the problem is. The problem is these speech writers, dus premier nou praat sonder speech, toe praat die premier nou van woordkamp. Because daar is wat ons wil hoor. Elmarie moet ons kom sê, van die 56 biljoen, gee ons net 1 mens wat 1 miljoen gekry het, van die 56 biljoen. Daar is wat ons wil hoor. And that is the question that Mohadi raised. And she asked, what have we done? And that is what ons moet doen. Because die speech wat die premier gegee het, is dieselfde speech wat ek maart gehoor het, by minister Gadebe en by Karin. Ons kan nie in Noordkap dieselfde speech kom hoor. Ons wil die premier moet praat van Noordkap.
Okay, please state your question.
Ons sê mens nie die premier is 'n vrou van die Kalahari nie. Ons soek action. Kom ek gee die premier best practice nou. Themba Nkwanasi is the CEO van Kumba. Hy is 2016 geappoint. 2016 toe Kumba suspend op Tsansabani, Katu en Kuruman 78 miljoen. Themba het 'n bold decision gevat. 2017 toe hy spend 528 miljoen. Dit jaar gaan hy spend 1 biljoen is, volgende jaar gaan hy spend 2 biljoen is. Dit is wat ons nodig het nou. Wat Makibi van gepraat het van deliberate decision making. Die premier het ook gepraat van bold and strong leadership. Ons het nie die klomp Engels nodig van humanization nie. Ons het nie renewable energy charters nodig nie. Ons het die implementation protocols nodig nie. Ons het 'n premier nodig wat kan sê soos Themba Nkwanasi, top 40 companies. Kom julle hierso. Themba top 40 companies ingeroep.
Thank you, your time
top
is
40
up.
companies.
Thank you.
Ek wil hê julle moet mense kom empower van Bosmasburg en Katu.
Sir,
Hy die supply chain ingeroep en gesê, as jy nie saam met my stem nie, dan moet jy die werk los. 3 mense het ons 'n werk gelos because hulle nie saam met Themba gestem nie. Dit is wat ons nodig het. En ons het die mense nodig wat ons vertel van Teti.
No, please.
Ek moet ons 500 kilometers net om te maak.
Please, we have to manage time.
Dan die laaste ene emissie politie, die laaste ene is, daar's 'n incongruence hierso. Die emissie van, ek stem nie saam met wat er gives the challenges. Hy sê ons het low business skills. Ons stem nie saam met die challenges, ons gaan 'n brief skryf na die emissie toe van economic affairs. Ons het besighede wat kan participate. Ons het die skills, ons is reg. Ons het 'n 5 biljoen fund wat ons vasgemaak het in Sandton in. Dus kom ons sê ons is black industrialist. Vir die mining, daar's 'n 5 biljoen fund vir mining om ons mense te help. So ons is reg om te kan participate in Window 5. Die laaste ene, die Renewable Energy Unit moet geallocate word in die office van die premier. Die Renewable Energy Unit moet geallocate word in die office van die premier. Office of the Premier deals with transverse and cross-cutting issues. Hy dink kan nie die economic affairs is nie. Ons moet leadership van die premier kry daarso. So ons het die geld premier vir Window 5, die biljoene het ons. Dis daarso, die man is reg en senten en hulle kan dit van. So as dit die probleem, jy kan premier 9 projekte gee van Window 5 wat die expedited round wat nog gecancel is. Waar ons wil participate, 9 projekte, maar kan nou nie praat van 'n ander man aan die idees nie.
Ja, die tyd gaan opraak. Meneer?
I don't think there's a response to what you've said, but it's fine. I'm sure the panelists will pick up.
Yeah, can I just?
There were a lot of comments.
No,
Thank you.
Professor, respect, please. I want to intervene. There's a reason why there's a program director and a chairperson. Understand our roles. I am here to monitor the progress of the meeting in terms of time and participation and everything. So we really want to give each and everyone an opportunity, and that's why we had to intervene and ask the gentleman, please try to be shorter so that we are fair to the next person. Time is maybe because we started late this morning. Definitely it's not your mistake, but we are trying to manage everything. So, moet ook nie klink of jy ons so skel nie, meneer. Baie skellerig geklink. But we took it in good spirit what you were saying. We understood what you were saying, and you have a mouthful to say, I believe. So you can even after engage whoever panelist you want to engage if you are not satisfied with your opportunity that you had. Over to you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The gentleman who's standing up at the back. So halfway up. Thank you.
I've been in business since 2003. I'm staying in the Northern Cape. The Business Forum represents the needs and the objectives of businessmen in the Northern Cape. So my number is 082-082-4756. We can handle also projects in the Northern Cape. I've got a business card here from a Chinese guy. I think he's working for this Redstone project in Portsmouth. What I'm saying, we must not come with more problems. We must come with solutions to see how best can we make the Northern Cape work. Just for example, Professor, maybe maybe I might be wrong, it's a perception. I just saw one mining process of PMG mining. There's a lot of hostels at the back. There's about 300 Chinese who have been imported to work there. That's not what we want. When we say local content, I say, okay, they changed the deals in Johannesburg with the national minister. But when they come locally, let us make sure. I listened to Mayor Miriam Kibi. She was very clear. I listened to Mukhadi Mudise. Local content, I listened to the Premier. Local content, procurement spent locally, SME development. We must not only be happy when they say the solar power plant in Portsmouth builds, what is this? Hair salons, and that's not what we want. We want more. As I said, on the billions, locally, be hundreds, 100,000s. It must be more value. So if we need businessmen in the Northern Cape, there are forums that are united, that are organized, that can work together. That is what I want to raise. That's my number. If you need my email address, I can give it later. The second point, Renewable Energy Unit, if it goes to the department or the Premier's office, I have been monitoring some areas where these projects are. There are many people who are representing the Premier, not even working in the Premier's office. The Chinese don't know who they are. I get a Chinese call from China. You hear, Tabakis is from the Premier. I'm not working for the Premier's office. But these Chinese, okay, we must know from the Premier's office who is the Premier in the Premier's office. Who Premier's office? Because when there's public participation meetings in these areas where we've got these projects, there's someone who is not from Gugumata Opani or Justice Beke or Tulani Bila. It's someone not working in the Premier's office, but we'll hear he's representing the Premier's office. It's not right. Let us make sure we send correct people to represent the Premier in the Premier's office. Please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was someone over on the very far right-hand side. On my right, that over there, way over there.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Gordon Africa, the Spear Development Foundation. Because I need to be short, I will be talking in bullets. Bullet 1. The Northern Cape Province is home to at least 3 mega projects. The Square Kilometre Array Telescope, Renewable Energy, and the Bloodhound. Bullet 2. We are standing on the verge of the 4th Industrial Revolution. Bullet 3, there are 2 words or phrases that I have not heard in this conference. The one being impact on our learners in schools, and the second one being the 4th Industrial Revolution. Now, if we are not going to make use of the opportunities that I've mentioned in the province, we will be losing ground considerably fast. I have in my hand a little generator that I've made with Lego. And I am walking around scrounging for money so that we can get learners to code and to do robotics. If we want to prepare our communities for the opportunities that we have at hand, then certainly we dare not leave out our schools, starting to prepare our learners, not only for the 4th Industrial Revolution, but for the many opportunities that we have at hand. What is it that I think, Chairperson, is, I think what we have been speaking about is all up there. Can we just bring these things down to the ground so that we can ground it, so that we will know what it is that we will be leaving here with ultimately. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think there was another question over on just towards the back of my left. There's the gentleman who's hand up, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. It's Councillor Josie Komba from Sopaiti Municipality. Chair of the session, you have raised the issue of the 6,000 solar heaters that must be installed in Sopaiti Municipality. Installed with solar heaters. And one must make it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof. Alistair, make some progress. So I think we need to look outside of this to make sure that we see how we can take this progressively forward. Even the issues that Mr. Sichabakis have raised, it is the issue of imported labor. Sometimes because of the fact that, and that is why I think one of the proposals that we made is that there should be a dynamic interaction between the different spheres of government, so that the one hand must know what the other hand is doing. It is also, for us, it's a problem in the mining sector as well as in the renewable energy sector. The permitting and other things are happening at the national level. And in many instances, we find things happening in our backyard, and we are actually informed of it very late. And we have, as provinces, reported this issue in the Presidential Coordinating Committee before. We are going to take it up with the new president again, because that is the kind of things that are leading to the kind of dissatisfaction that you sometimes find in provinces, because national departments do things without really taking into consideration that the provincial department will have to deal with the effects of whatever is being brought into our provinces. I think that is what I want to respond to, because sometimes we are being blamed for things that we find out about very late. And the renewable energy issue and the IPPs, we have been making sure that we've been battling for a long time. We have called them to meetings. We have done some issues of community trust because it is not working in our province, in other areas. So we knew what would be the issues around it if it is established here. So we did some research. We want to propose an alternative model, but the fact of the matter is that they are signing agreements at another level and not necessarily at the provincial level. So we would love to have some proposals from you, and there is, there is some things that is developing where we can see that if we just really take a strong stance as a province, national have to listen to us, and that is what we are doing. I think when we meet, we will be able to give more information. Just on the issue of the solar heaters, we have been engaging the CEF and also the IPP office. The unfortunate part, once again, is that the agreement is being signed with the municipalities directly. But what we have requested the Department of Energy is that, and that is also a proposal that was actually made by a former minister, and possibly Ma'am Mudise will be able to assist us there. And that was that this solar water heaters, the program for implementation, we must make sure that we identify the young people that we can skill and also to form their own companies where they can be the program. So far it has not happened, but I think I will agree with anyone who say that we will have to make sure that we empower the local people with the kind of programs, projects, particularly also the issue of the water heaters that we have been engaging. We will be engaging once again. We requested the IPP as well as the CEF in South Lightning. Did not work. There was a problem because, and that is why we have requested that there should be some kind of agreement with an educational institution so that we have the training locally for our local learners, not learners per se, but people that we can actually empower to be able to run the solar water heater program.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments from you?
Okay, thank you. Let me just give additional information when it comes to solar water heater program. It's good that I'm the responsible program manager who would give you hands-on information, and I take responsibility as well for some of the things that maybe did not go well. Because I want to point a finger to ESCOM because it was a team effort. Maybe it's important that we share the context why we find ourselves in the very same situation where we are sitting with dysfunctional gases. You may recall that in 2009 we started experiencing load shedding, and several initiatives came on board in terms of how do we avert the situation. And one of the programs that were identified then was to introduce solar water heater program. And at the time, we depended mainly on imported products. Imported products, I wouldn't mention where they were coming from, but like they were flowing into the country. And one of the factors that came to our realization is that the climatic conditions played a key role in terms of the efficiency of those gases. So hence, within a short space of time, they were not working because where they were manufactured and where we are in terms of South African climatic conditions were not the same. And the engagement and the lessons taken from the previous rollout where we worked with ESCOM, which went until 2014, we had to revise the implementation model, which we took to Cabinet in 2015. And in most of the issues that were raised then were fully addressed. I will get even to the point of addressing the skills development, which we are doing. Maybe you will get to a point of appreciating that we did acknowledge the shortfalls and the weaknesses, and we are not running away from that point. One point was that, one, we had to address the issue of imported products and make sure that products are manufactured locally. Hence, in the minister's speech, we had to acknowledge the appreciation and the support that we received from Department of Trade and Industry. In the year 2012-13, DTI, together with ourselves, but they led the study. They did, an extensive study in terms of what can be designated in the country. And that study led to the designation note where the collectors and the tanks were designated to a threshold of 70% local content. And we had to terminate the MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, with ESCOM because we didn't want the problem to continue, so that we can address what has gone wrong and what we need to do going forward, because the problem cannot, persist forever. We need to find solutions. And as I speak, the 87,000 units that I'm talking about were locally produced in South Africa, and we do not foresee or anticipate to have dysfunctional units, except that if it's for technical reasons. Number two, the issue of municipalities complaining about not being engaged, particularly on the basis where when problems come, municipalities are not in a position to answer because they would not have been engaged in terms of planning, in terms of decision making, where decisions would have been taken at national together with ESCOM at that time. Hence, we had to take advantage of the regulatory tools that are there, such as Intergovernmental Relations Act, where now we're entering into framework agreements outlining the roles and responsibilities of both national departments, municipalities. Not only the South African Bureau of Standards is the institution that has been appointed to deal with local content verification, because they have, laboratories to test the local content that we are talking about. And the units that I'm referring to in terms of 87,000 have been verified. They have all met local content requirements. That being said, in terms of the skills, the local skills, within the framework agreement, we have agreed that people within where the installation would happen should be skilled. And that's the route that we are taking. We have just entered into a memorandum of agreement with Energy and Water sector, particularly to train people within municipalities. What I mentioned is that in Solplati, we're talking about 6,000 units. Mtanjeni, we're talking about 4,000. Next week, we're having a workshop where we're taking through municipalities in terms of what are the technical requirements for you to be able to identify the young, youth who qualify in terms of what it takes for you to go through that training. It's particularly or precisely the point that we want to ensure that post the installation, there are people in the local area who would have benefited, who have been skilled in terms of, being accredited as well, to deal with issues of maintenance and operations. That also being touched on, let me also touch on the point that the current model takes into account the warranty that comes with the units. So in the previous phase, we didn't have a warranty, hence the dysfunctional unit led to the minister appointing the Central Energy Fund as the institution or the organization that would be dealing with the repair and replace program, following the footprint on all the units that are not working so that they can be fixed. We also need to deal with the issue of perception when it comes to technology, because communities may end up, or end users may end up thinking that the solar geyser technology is not working. However, I have already shared with you one of the main reasons as
we're ahead of the curve. And that's what we have to do with energy. Learning how to read the future and then
Prof, thank you to our panel and our chairperson of the session. You will see that there's quite an interesting program ahead. If you could not pose your question or got the opportunity, there is still another session by the end of today, and I want us to give some more time to that because I see that you are quite ready to participate in this conference. So I will now call upon the next three speakers to join the stage, but I will ask them to do each one of them to do their presentations in 10 minutes. I see there's 20 minutes allocated. Please see whether you can make it in 10 minutes. Then after that, we will go for a short tea. I will be guided by you. Whether you feel whoever wants tea should just go out and come back, and we continue because there's still a program this evening, and I believe even there is the place to be. There you can once again get the opportunity to individually share your issues or whatever you want to discuss. It's Mr. Emilien Tatelo and Mr. Peter Mokomelo. Can we have you all on the stage? And whilst they come to the stage, you will see we will have later on SEFA, SEFA, IDC, PIC, MEF, and you will get an opportunity to put your questions to them. So it's going to be quite a good afternoon. Mr. Emilien Tatelo, and then Mr. Peter Mokomelo, he's about to come enter the steps. Okay. Ms. Elmarie, it's all yours. And I'm timing you. Is 10 minutes okay? We've agreed. Let me just agree. I will want to be very fair. 10 minutes, is it fine for you? You want some more? 10. You can capture people this time of day in 10 minutes. After that, you will lose them. So see what you can do about it. Over to you, Elmarie.
Well, I think you get the graveyard shift and then you get this shift. I think it's even worse. But in any case, I think I'm going to skip the whole presentation. But I think so many people have touched about the status of the IPPs and where we are and what we've achieved and what we haven't achieved. So I think it's very clear with the establishment of REAP, we have to procure energy, and I think we have achieved that. We have achieved to bring in investment into this country, 201 billion. I think that's great. But did we achieve the rest of the objectives? Those socio-economic development objectives that were set out to do. Did we stimulate economic growth? Did we manage to actually stimulate the local rural economies? Did we do that? Did we contribute to... So I don't even think I'm going to answer that. I think you all have talked about the lack of coordination on the ED, the SED, and the community dividends that's flowing into the communities. But what are we seeing of that? Where's the coordination? Where's the projects? And I think a lot of speakers have touched on that. But I would like to stand still on that other part of it, on the localization. Did we achieve what we set out to achieve on that? So let's skip all of these lots of pages. So I would like to stop at, there we go. So when we designed this, the REP, our renewable program, the whole intent was obviously to stimulate local spend, local content, and localization. Within the RFP, we identified, well, we tried to stimulate localization by telling that we have to spend a certain amount of local spend as a percent of the local project value. We thought the whole size of the project, the rollout of the program, and the scale of it will make sure that we actually benefit the upstream and the downstream development, that we're going to stimulate manufacturing, and that we will going to see a whole deep structural transformation of the economy. Right, and I think what happened with each bid window, we set certain targets, and as the bid windows continue, we obviously increased the thresholds and the targets, and we did indeed see 45% and increasing local content expenditure on the programs. What we did see then obviously is towards, we saw a whole lot of manufacturers in the technology and component sectors being established in South Africa. We saw a whole, in 2013 we saw the import of panels, etc. And then we started to see the turnaround in 2014, where we started to see an export industry of PV panels slowly increasing and imports declining. We saw at least 12 big green industry manufacturers established in South Africa towards 2015. And then it was the whole impasse. Nothing got signed, nothing happened on the renewable industry, and what happened, we saw, well, approximately 9 companies closed down. A lot of companies actually decided to withdraw from South Africa. There was a lot of potential investment into the country, into the manufacturing sector, that was totally put on hold. We saw about 2,000 jobs being wasted because of that. So what do we need to do then? I think furthermore, what I need to say also with bid window 4, I think it was the Premier that actually said, so there's 2.8 million PV modules that needs to be manufactured, about 600 inverters, 370 transformers, 500 wind turbines and towers. But what we've got left in the country, and Harabek from DTI can assist, will these manufacturers that stay behind, will they be able to deliver on time the quality and the quantity that we need? I don't know, I doubt. But what I do know, for us in the IDP office, we very much at a juncture to decide how are we going to take local content and localization forward. What I do know is that the reprogram cannot do it on its own. We need a total economic cluster approach. There's no way that I can support the development of BEs and black industrialists through my reprogram, and I say 60% must be black industrialists, but they cannot find finance. So while I'm saying a cluster approach, there's my IDC and GBSA colleagues. I need the financial sector to come to the party and to help with the finance. How do we do this? How do we pull it through being black industrialists, not only sitting on the board but participating in the EPC? And how do I turn that? How do I get the young South African manufacturers to participate on the supplier side? They're too expensive. So how can I get the best price for the consumer if my local manufacturer is too expensive? How is DTI going to support the reprogram on that? What about performance guarantees? So we need a package, we need a cluster approach. Every one of us needs to come together. So it's not about the percentage of local content spent. We need to decide within this whole value chain, what do we want? What is that strategic local content that we want to support to see that it's effective and efficiently manufactured in a sustainable manner? That doesn't matter what happens in the global market or the internal market, that it's competitive, that we can export it, that we can use it internally. So a sustainable, competitive market, that's what we want. We want to see through that increasing employment and productivity. So what I'm saying is obviously a cluster approach, a focused approach that can again create investor confidence. What we're also saying is policy certainty, a rollout of the programs, no stop-start. There must be a vision and visibility on where we're going with this industry of ours. We need political commitment. We cannot again stop and start. We want to know that our politicians are behind us when we start putting all these incentive packages and everything together. Yeah, I think that is that. And that does not mean, looking into the future, where are the procurement programs going? Will we see a REAP program in the format as it is at the moment with huge, big renewable projects? I don't know. Maybe we should roll out smaller ones, embedded energy, I don't know, where we're going. So it's definitely a challenge for us, and we also need to be at the forefront of change, keeping abreast of that.
Let's move closer. Let's move closer. Closer. This is fine. This is fine. Let's move a little bit closer again. We can zoom in.
Okay, ladies, we are blessed with a PowerPoint presentation, and it will be Mr. Tatelo. He's the Program Manager for Infrastructure and Services, Salga Northern Cape. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, no, big.
Thank you very much, Program Director. All people observed. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I was requested by the project manager of this Renewable Conference that there will be good stories that will be told about the IPTs, but also there is some other views that must be heard from communities and municipalities where this independent power producers are. So I made an attempt to try to consolidate all the inputs. The inputs are the reflection of municipalities as to how they feel currently about the IPPs. So this is a presentation outline. Maybe one might ask, why is Salga presenting municipalities now on this presentation?
Showing numbers.
But if you look on the first side, you see that Salga actually lobbies, it advocates, and it represents municipalities. So all the interest of municipalities is the responsibility of Salga that it must attend to them. So trying to give a small background on the issues that are related to the renewable energy is that when the renewable energy was launched, I think we all agree that there were great expectations of this particular mega project. I think we can summarize from what was being said from this morning that it's going to be a very serious player in the economic development of coastal communities, which is well and good. And what we have realized as municipalities is that during the conceptual phases, this particular potential IPPs will make some bold promises to municipalities that should we be able to be successful in our bid. These are the big things that we are going to do for these municipalities. So municipalities will go